Hey friends, Tuesday night, time for our Tuesday Worship Express. So I have something really exciting planned for the next several weeks. My first question to you is, well, before we jump right in, it's November. Things are starting to cool off. It's been daylight savings over the weekend. We switched, we gained an hour, I guess. But I'm still off. It's really dark, really early, and I get really tired really early. But this is a really exciting book that we're going to get into tonight. So I hope that you will find the time to join us. So my first question to you is, have you ever read a really good book that you just couldn't put down and you couldn't wait to pick it up the next time it was time to do some reading? That is kind of how I'm feeling about this book in the Bible. And we are in the Old Testament. I kind of liked the female woman power that we've kind of been on for a while with Zelophehad's daughters, and then we talked about Joshua last week. But tonight we jump into the book of Esther, and it's not a book that is talked about very often. And the more I'm getting into it, the more I kind of see why, but we're gonna go for it. So be ready to be fascinated and intrigued with this book. Couple of things just to give you some background. First thing I learned was there are only 2 books in the Bible, I guess I hadn't thought about this, that are named after women, Ruth and Esther. So this is one of them. And this is also one of 2 books in the Bible that does not mention God's name. So you might think, where is he in this book? But let me tell you, his name might not be in here, but he is all over this story. And it's just really cool. So what I want to ask is, why is this book in the Bible? Because it's kind of a romantic, I wouldn't call it a love story, but there are some hints of romanticism in the story. Why would we be required to read this as a book in the Bible? What do we learn from this? And then last, where is God in the story? So we're going to unfold all of that in the next several weeks. So I'm going to do some reading from the Bible. I hope that's okay with you. But just to give you a little bit of background, Esther was written, like I said, in the Old Testament, and it was written during the Jewish exile. So this story, from what I gather, could be a good example, a really good guide to how to act in a non-Christian setting. Hey, Mom. Hey, Pastor Gary. I'm glad you guys are here. So that's kind of what I took from it, that maybe this is a way to teach us how to act when we are around people who want to treat us badly or want to do the wrong thing. This is an opportunity to show us how to do the right thing. So we have a handful of main characters I'm going to go over. We have King Xerxes. Sorry if I mispronounce it. We have Esther, Mordecai, who is her uncle. So he's also of the Jewish faith. And then we have a man named Haman, who is very close to King Xerxes. So King Xerxes and Haman are of the Persian Empire. So he's a Persian king. And then Queen Vashti, who doesn't stick around for too long, is with King Xerxes in the beginning of this story. So what we're going to do is kind of jump right in. And like I said, I hope to have this unfold over the next several weeks. So we're going to start by just going right into chapter 1, verse 1. So here's what happened during the time of King Xerxes. King Xerxes, who ruled over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Kush. At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, and in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. So you can imagine, he's a Persian king, very wealthy, not very humble or modest, very, wanting to show off his wealth and have this long-lasting banquet party situation. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen fastened with cords of white linen and purple material to silver rings on the marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of marble, pearl of mother, and other costly stones. Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other, and the royal wine was abundant in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink in his own way, for the king instructed all of the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. So this was just kind of ongoing, very, very lavish. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, here's where it gets interesting, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, and it lists their names, but I'd rather not try to pronounce them, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king. This king had special access to the highest in the kingdom. So these were people that he consulted with a lot. According to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti, he asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Then Mumakin replied to the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and all the people of all the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not do it. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. So what they're feeling is this sense of uprise of women saying, no, I'm not going to do that, because if the queen's going to say no, that gives them the green light to say no when they don't want to do something. So therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. So check this out for a minute. So basically what's happening is he has instructed her to get dressed in her royal clothing and her crown and just be something for people to look at because she was quite beautiful. And she didn't want to do that. And I can't say that I blame her. And she somehow said, no, I'm not going to do that. And she was banished, basically. So they stripped her of her crown and her clothing and said, also let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then when the king edict is proclaimed throughout all the vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest. So I'm not really sure why they think this was the thing to do. But anyway, this is a really good story. So the king and his nobles were pleased with the advice. So the king did as Mumakin proposed. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in his own script, and to each people in his own language, proclaiming to each people's tongue that every man should be ruler over his own household. Okay, so now what's getting ready to happen is chapter 2 is titled Esther Made Queen. So that tells you what happens, but in order to get to that point, so they're trying to gather all of these young, beautiful women so that he can basically choose out of a lineup the one that he wants to replace Queen Vashti, because now she's gone. So they gather up the women, and it's a long process, because what they do is they give them basically 12 months of treatment of, oil and myrrh and cosmetics, and just basically the works to make them feel like a queen and allow them to carry themselves like a queen, so that he will notice them. So let's see, where can I pick up? When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem of these girls. The girl pleased him and won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with beauty treatments, which is what I was telling you, and special food. He assigned her to 7 maids selected from the king's palace and moved her and her maids into the best place in the palace. So Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. So imagine, she is a Jewish woman amongst all of these Persian women and men, and trying to keep herself as a secret, because this was not a place for her to be revealed of her Jewish faith. And Mordecai, who was her uncle, told her to make sure that she didn't reveal it. So Esther had not revealed her nationality. Every day, Mordecai walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Before a girl's turn came to go into King Xerxes had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with the myrrh and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. This is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would go there, and in the morning return to another part. Let's see. When the turn came for Esther, the girl Mordecai had adopted. So, like I said, Mordecai was her uncle. She was the daughter. So both of her parents were gone, and so he kind of adopted her. Mordecai had adopted the daughter of his uncle. To go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. Everyone thought she was this amazing person. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now, the king really was taken with her and thought that she was the one that he wanted to choose to be the next queen. So at the end of the chapter, the part of this chapter, chapter 2, verse 18, the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. So this is what's happening is he's going to choose her to be the next queen. And the next thing that we're going to get into is, I told you about Mordecai. He's another character. And then Haman is also a character. We don't like Haman. He's not someone that is a favorite character. But the things that we're getting ready to experience with this story is just really cool. So I'm actually going to stop it there for tonight. And we're going to pick up on Mordecai uncovering a conspiracy next week. That's what we learned that he does. And just keep in mind, this is a person that is amongst people that do not value her and her Jewish faith. And Mordecai knows that. But his experience of all of this comes in a little bit later in the story, which is just really cool. So although we don't hear God's name being spoken in this book, in this scripture, he is all over it. And I really feel like the things that happen as I said earlier, could be a really good guide to help us in the way that maybe we carry ourselves, or the way that we work a situation out in a non-Christian setting, you know, at a place where we are uncomfortable, or where we might be being questioned. So this is one that I hope that you're kind of waiting for, to hear what the rest of the story holds for us. But that's where we're going to end it tonight, and we're going to pick up next week. We're still in chapter 2. And thanks for being a part of this. And I don't know how many people are out there, but we will see you next week. Have a good rest of your week. And as always, thanks for being here. See you guys.